The Dominion battle line shuddered to a halt 12,000 clicks out from USF Task Force 7's flagship Iron Resolve, the last of their overextended vanguard corvettes drifting lifeless, port reactor venting iridescent plasma into the void. For 72 relentless hours, the Dominion had pushed human defenses back to the Proxima Centauri outer perimeter, their Cracker-class siege weapons primed to punch through the Iron Resolve's primary shield grid and open the system to full occupation. 10 seconds prior, the cracker Wren had boarded had been counting down to a 50-teraton antimatter detonation that would have vaporized 3 human cruisers and left the colony transports defenseless. Now the countdown was frozen, the weapon's turret dark, its core neutralized. On the Iron Resolve's tactics bridge, the hum of damaged server racks mixed with the sharp stench of burnt ozone and stale coffee. Tactical Officer Lieutenant Mara Voss slammed her fist on the cracked sensor console so hard a crack spiderwebbed across the display. "Confirm cracker status," she barked, her voice raw from 18 hours of non-stop comms duty. Sensor Technician Javi, a 19-year-old conscript who'd lost his entire forward deployment squad in the opening salvo of the battle, didn't look up from his feeds. "Core is cold, firing sequence locked out, turret power offline." Boarding charge worked exactly as designed. A ragged, exhausted cheer went up from the bridge crew, cut short when Voss held up a calloused hand. "Hold the noise, we're still in the fight." Clinging to the cracker's scarred hull plating, Wren's ears were ringing so loud he could barely hear his pod's comms crackle. His left side throbbed where shrapnel from the breaching charge had caught him, the seals on his EVA suit weeping faint plumes of oxygen into the vacuum. He keyed his throat mic, voice rough. "Cracker core is fully neutralized. Countdown S locked out, turret S disabled. I've got 4 hostiles moving through the access corridor behind me. Looks like they're trying to reroute power to the backup firing system." Voss's jaw tightened. The Dominion had built redundancy into every one of their siege weapons. If the hostiles reached the auxiliary core, the cracker would be operational again in 90 seconds, and the human fleet's hard-won advantage would vanish. "Hold position, Wren. We're pushing a suppression strike at your hull in 10. Don't let them get to the backup core." Wren was already moving, pry bar wedged in the cracker's external access panel. He could hear the Dominion troops' boot clangs through the hull plating, their guttural command bursts crackling over their comms, picked up by his suit's signal interceptor. He wrenched the first power conduit loose, sparks showering his visor. "Make it 5, Voss. I'm pulling the routing lines now. If they get to the auxiliary core before I'm done, we're back to square one." Outside the bridge viewport, the human fleet was already shifting formation. The 3 heavy cruisers that had spent the last 72 hours holding the line against the Dominion's capital ships turned their spinal railguns toward the enemy's command cruiser, the vessel that had directed the cracker's targeting for the last 6 hours. The Dominion's advance had been blunted, but their command ship was still operational, still capable of ordering the rest of their fleet to fall back and regroup, or worse, detonate its own core to take out half the human task force before they could secure the system. Wren's HUD flashed red, a proximity alert blaring in his ear. The hostiles were 20 meters out. He yanked the second power conduit free, the cracker's internal lights flickering and dying as he severed the link to the auxiliary core. "Routing's cut, backup core's isolated, but I've got company." The Iron Resolve's point defense batteries opened fire a second later, 3 consecutive rounds slamming into the cracker's hull 10 meters from Wren's position. The blast threw him hard against the plating, his HUD flickering out for 3 full seconds before sputtering back to life. When his vision cleared, the 4 Dominion troops were gone, blown clear into the void by the suppression strike. "Hostiles are down," Wren said, voice quieter now, the adrenaline of the boarding charge fading into the ache of his injuries. "Crackers fully neutralized, but the Dominion command cruiser's reactor output just spiked 40%. Looks like they're charging their own core for RAM." Voss stared at the sensor feed, the Dominion command cruiser's engines flaring bright blue as it turned its bow directly toward the Iron Resolve, the colony transports huddled behind the flagship. She didn't hesitate, no trace of the exhaustion that had been dragging at her for 3 days in her voice. "All ships, brace for impact. Task Force, form up tight on the Iron Resolve's shield grid. We don't let them get within 5,000 clicks of the transports." She keyed the fleet-wide comms, her tone sharp, unyielding. "This is Voss. We hold the line. No one gets past us today." Outside, the first of the human fleet's long-range railgun slugs slammed into the Dominion cruiser's forward shields, cascading sparks visible even through the void. Wren clipped his safety line to the cracker's hull, watching the railgun fire streak past him toward the charging enemy, the faint hum of his suit's oxygen recycler the only sound in his ears. For the first time in 72 hours, the humans weren't just holding on, they were fighting back. The vibration of the Iron Resolve's main batteries traveled the length of Wren's safety line, before the first railgun slug slammed into the Dominion cruiser's forward shields, a dull thud echoing through the cracker's hollowed-out hull beneath his boots. His HUD flashed amber, thermal shielding dipping to 61% as the wreckage's hull temp climbed another 0.8 degrees in 10 seconds. The suppression strike that had taken out the Dominion boarding party had cooked the cracker's internal wiring, and the residual heat was bleeding through the composite plating under his mag boots. He adjusted his stance, wincing as the gash in his left thigh throbbed in time with the distant thud of capital ship fire, and swiveled his head to track the railgun streaks arcing past him toward the enemy. On the Iron Resolve's bridge, Chief Weapons Officer Mara Kale slammed her palm against the tactical console, the impact making the row of duty station lights flicker. Shields held, but were down to 37% across the grid. That cruiser's dumping every non-essential system's power into its ram core, coolant, life support, even fighter escort power relays. They're not planning to stop. Her screen flashed red as the Dominion cruiser's velocity ticked up another 0.01 c, the blue glow of its bow engine bright enough to bleed through the fleet's long-range sensor feed. Captain Voss didn't look up from the transport fleet's position plot, her jaw tight enough to crack stone. All destroyers switch to Mark 7 torpedoes. Railguns hold fire for the Dominion's follow-on escort cruisers. Target their stern thrusters first, slow their acceleration, buy the transports 10 more minutes to spool up their jump drives. She keyed the fleet-wide comms, her tone sharp enough to cut through static. All escort craft, priority target any interceptor wing breaking from the Dominion screen. No free shots on boarding teams. Wren's wrist comms crackled to life a second later, the open fleet frequency piping Kale's confirmation of the order through his earpiece. He tapped the secondary sensor feed he'd rigged to scan the cracker for Dominion data cores before the boarding charge, and a faint, pulsing blip caught his eye. Half buried under the cracker's forward armor, a Dominion escape pod, unpowered, hull breach minimal, its transponder blipping once every 4 seconds. It had launched right before the suppression strike had taken out the rest of the Dominion boarding party, too small for the Iron Resolve's initial sensor sweep to pick up through the cracker's wreckage. He keyed his mic, keeping his voice level despite the adrenaline still prickling at the back of his neck. Voss Wren, I've got a Dominion escape pod half buried in the cracker's bow. Looks like it launched pre-suppression. Can I bring it in? Might have their RAM sequence codes, even their fleet comms encryption. Before she could answer, 3 blips screamed onto his short-range sensor feed. Dominion interceptors, moving at Mach 12, weapons locked. Interceptors, he said, no need to elaborate. Bring the pod in if you can. Voss's voice came back crisp, no room for debate. The fleet's not diverting cover for you, you're on your own for those 3. Wren cursed under his breath, popping the mag clamps on his safety line to free himself from the cracker's hull. He fired his suit's maneuvering thrusters, and a sharp lance of pain shot up his left leg as the gash in his thigh pulled, nearly sending him tumbling off into the void. He corrected his trajectory with a grunt, pauldron-mounted point defense turrets, swiveling to track the incoming interceptors. The lead interceptor opened fire first, plasma bolts streaking past his helmet and singeing the edge of his visor, the acrid smell of burning suit polymer leaking through his recycler's filter. He yanked the mag pike from his belt, jamming it into a gap in the cracker's ruined hull to swing himself behind a slab of twisted composite armor just as a second plasma bolt vaporized the section of plating he'd been standing on 2 seconds prior. He peeked around the armor slab, tracking the interceptor's flight paths. The lead one was close, less than 60 meters out, trying to get a lock on the buried pod. Wren waited until it was within 50 meters, then fired a micro-grenade from his suit's forearm launcher straight into its engine intake. The interceptor exploded in a burst of white plasma, debris slamming into the second interceptor's port wing and sending it spinning out of control into the dark, its weapons firing wildly into the void. The third interceptor broke off immediately, burning hard back toward the Dominion cruiser's escort screen. Wren didn't waste time, firing his thrusters again and wincing as his legs screamed in protest, latching onto the buried pod's hull and hooking it to his safety line. He fired a bright orange signal flare from his suit's shoulder mount, marking his position for the Iron Resolve's waiting recovery tender, before turning back to the approaching Dominion cruiser. On the bridge, Kale's console blared as the first wave of Mark 7 torpedoes slammed into the Dominion cruiser's stern. Thrusters are slag, acceleration down to 0.08 c, but they're not changing course. Impact in 87 seconds minimum. The main sensor feed glowed bright blue as the Dominion cruiser's ram core flared, the glow bright enough to cast shadows across the bridge's control panels. Voss stared at the blip, then at the transport fleet's position plot huddled behind the Iron Resolve's shield grid, and keyed the comms one last time, her voice steady, no trace of fear, only the cold, unyielding steel of someone who'd already written off her own survival for the colony ships behind her. All hands brace for impact. Iron resolve, divert all auxiliary power to forward shields. If that cruiser gets through, none of us make it out of this system. We hold the line. Chapter 3. The line holds. The Dominion cruiser loomed larger on the tactical display, its ram core burning like a miniature star. The Iron Resolve's bridge was silent except for the clipped reports of officers, each voice taut but steady. Forward shields at 120% overdraw, Kale announced, his hands moving across the console with mechanical precision. Auxiliary batteries are bleeding dry. We've got 90 seconds before the grid collapses. Voss didn't flinch. Keep them up. If the cruiser breaks through, the colony ships are finished. The Dominion vessel pressed forward, its hull bristling with weapons. Plasma lances fired in disciplined volleys, hammering the Iron Resolve's shields. The human ship shuddered, bulkheads groaning under the strain. Impact countdown 73 seconds, Kale said. His voice was calm, but his knuckles whitened against the console. Wren's flare marker blinked on the tactical overlay, a tiny orange beacon against the void. The recovery tender was moving to intercept, but the Dominion cruiser's trajectory threatened to cut straight across the tender's path. Commander, Kale said, if we hold position, the tender won't clear the blast radius. Voss's jaw tightened. The tender knew the risk. Our priority is the colony fleet, no deviation. The words landed like steel. No one argued. The Dominion cruiser's comms burst across the channel, a guttural voice layered with distortion. Human vessel, disengage. Your resistance is futile. Your colony ships will be harvested. Voss keyed the response channel. Dominion vessel, this is Captain Voss of the Iron Resolve. You will not pass. Humanity does not yield. The Dominion commander's laughter echoed, cold and arrogant. Your defiance is admirable. It will be remembered when your bones fuel our reactors. Kale cut the channel. 58 seconds. The Iron Resolve's weapons officer, Lieutenant Harrow, spoke up. Captain, we've got one shot left with the spinal railgun. Coil integrity is at 30%. If we fire, the barrel will rupture. Voss didn't hesitate. Load it. Harrow's fingers flew across the console. Loading. Targeting ram core. The Dominion cruiser's glow intensified, its ram core pushing the vessel forward like a spear through the void. The Iron Resolve's shields flickered, arcs of energy crawling across the hull. 42 seconds, Kale said. Wren's voice crackled through the comms, strained but steady. Resolve, this is Wren. Pod secured. Tender is pulling me in. Don't wait for me. Fire when ready. Voss's eyes flicked to the tactical plot. Wren's beacon was still too close. If the railgun fired, the shockwave would tear through the tender's hull. She exhaled once, slow and deliberate. Wren, you're out of time. Brace yourself. Wren's reply was a single word. Understood. Harrow's console lit red. Railgun charged, coil integrity dropping. Fire, Voss ordered. The Iron Resolve's spine shuddered as the railgun discharged. A tungsten slug tore through the void, a streak of death accelerated to near-relativistic speed. The Dominion cruiser's shields flared, then collapsed under the impact. The slug punched straight into the ram core. The tactical display erupted in white. The Dominion cruiser's core detonated, a blinding sphere of plasma expanding outward. Shockwave incoming, Kale shouted. The Iron Resolve's shields screamed under the blast. Panels exploded across the bridge, sparks showering the crew. The tender's beacon vanished from the plot, swallowed by the expanding fireball. Wren's channel went dead. The bridge fell silent, every officer staring at the tactical display. The Dominion cruiser was gone, reduced to drifting fragments. The colony ships remained intact, shielded behind the Iron Resolve's battered grid. Kale's voice broke the silence. Shields at 12%. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Casualty reports incoming. Voss stood tall, her uniform scorched, her face streaked with soot. We held the line, that's all that matters. Harrow's hands trembled as he checked the railgun status. Barrel's gone. We won't fire again without a full rebuild. Voss nodded. Then we'll fight with what we have left. The comms crackled. A voice from the colony fleet came through, raw with relief. Iron Resolve, this is colony ship Horizon. You saved us. We owe you everything. Voss's reply was steady, unyielding. No debts, just survival. Keep moving. The Dominion will send more. Kale looked at her, eyes heavy. Captain Wren's beacon is gone. Voss's gaze lingered on the tactical display where the orange flare had once pulsed. She didn't speak for a long moment. When she did, her voice was iron. Wren knew the cost. His sacrifice bought us time. We'll honor it by surviving. The crew absorbed the words, each officer straightening, their exhaustion tempered by resolve. Outside, the wreckage of the Dominion cruiser drifted like shattered glass, glowing faintly against the stars. The Iron Resolve, scarred but unbroken, held position at the edge of the colony fleet. The battle wasn't over, it had only begun. Status of enemy reinforcements, Voss asked. Kale scanned the sensors. Multiple signatures inbound, Dominion destroyers closing fast. Estimated arrival, 12 minutes. Voss's eyes hardened. Then we fight again, ready all batteries, patch the breaches. Every second counts. The crew moved with grim efficiency, no hesitation, no wasted motion. Humanity's survival balanced on their shoulders, and they bore the weight without complaint. The Iron Resolve's battered hull gleamed faintly in the starlight, a lone sentinel against the darkness. And as the Dominion reinforcements closed in, the ship's crew prepared to write the next chapter of defiance in fire and steel. The Dominion Armada unfolded like a slow-burning nebula on the outer rim of the system, dozens of wedge-shaped destroyers threading through the debris field left by the fallen cruiser. Their hulls swallowed starlight, emitting a low harmonic thrum that vibrated through the vacuum and into the Iron Resolve's sensors. At 12 minutes out, the lead destroyer's bow glowed with the telltale charge of its forward plasma cannons. Captain Voss stood at the central console, her fingers hovering over the tactical overlay. The display painted the incoming vectors in sharp red, each arrow a promise of imminent impact. She tapped a command, routing power from the auxiliary generators to the forward shield matrix. A soft chime acknowledged the reroute. The shields flickered to 78% capacity, enough to absorb a glancing blow but not a sustained barrage. "Shields at 78%, holding," reported Lieutenant Mara Selby from the comms station, her voice flat, eyes never leaving the scrolling data. "Reinforcements will be within engagement envelope in 9 minutes 45 seconds. Voss nodded. "Divert 15% of reactor output to the railgun banks. We need a kinetic punch before they close to missile range." Across the deck, Chief Engineer Riaz Patel was already at work. His hands moved over the hull breach seals, spraying nanofibrous polymer into the torn plating. The material cured in seconds, forming a lattice that redistributed stress across the damaged frame. "Seal integrity restored to 92% on port side," he called, wiping sweat from his brow with a sleeve that smelled of ozone and burnt alloy. "Starboard side still at 84. I'll have it up to 90 by the time they're in range." In the weapons bay, Sergeant Tomas Ortiz supervised the loading of the 120 mm slug rounds into the railgun's magazine. Each slug was a depleted uranium core encased in a sabot designed to pierce the Dominion's composite armor. Ortiz checked the feed mechanism, his gaze flicking to the readout showing barrel temperature at 312 Kelvin, well within safe limits. Magazine at 96%. "Ready to fire on your mark," he said, his tone even, no hint of the adrenaline that usually accompanied a firefight. Voss turned to the navigation officer, Ensign Lee and Joe. "Plot a vector that puts us on a tangential intercept. We want to present our narrow profile, minimize cross-section." Joe's fingers danced over the holographic chart, course set to 47 Mark 12. "We'll slip past the lead destroyer's bow, using its own momentum to carry us into a blind spot behind its shield bubble." She glanced at the timer ticking down. "We'll have 27 seconds of optimal exposure before the second destroyer's lateral sensors pick us up." A soft alarm chimed from the damage control station. Petty Officer Jin-Ho Park reported, "Secondary coolant loop fluctuating. Pressure dropping 0.3 bar per minute. If we don't stabilize, we'll lose laser cooling in 4 minutes." Voss's eyes narrowed. "Divert bleed from the primary loop to secondary. Engage emergency vent to dump excess heat into the forward hull radiators. We'll take a temporary hit on forward thrust but keep the lasers online." Park affirmed, diverting now. A hiss of released gas sounded as the vent valves opened, a faint plume of ionized particles scattering against the ship's flank. The Iron Resolve shuddered slightly as the shunt engaged, the deck plates vibrating under the sudden redistribution of power. Voss felt the shift through her boots, a reminder that every decision was a trade-off measured in fractions of a second and percentages of hull integrity. "All batteries prepare to fire on my command," Voss said, her voice low enough that only those nearest the console could hear. "Ortiz, hold until we're within 18 kilometers. Selby, keep the comms tight, no chatter that could give away our position." The seconds ticked down. The lead destroyer's forward cannons began to charge, a deep violet glow blooming along its barrel. The Iron Resolve's railgun capacitors whined, storing energy in a high-pitch hum that resonated through the deck. At 18.3 kilometers, Voss gave the order. "Fire!" Ortiz slammed the firing stud. 2 slugs launched simultaneously, streaking toward the destroyer's bow with a scream of displaced air. The first impacted the shield bubble, sending a ripple of blue-white energy across its surface. The second punched through a microfracture in the shield, striking the hull just below the command tower. Kinetic energy transferred, jagged metal buckling inward, a plume of sparks erupting as the projectile fragmented. The destroyer shuddered, its forward cannons misfiring as the shockwave knocked loose a coolant line. Alarms flared on the alien vessel's bridge, red glyphs flashing, crew shouting in a guttural tongue that the ship's universal translator rendered as incoherent static. Selby's console lit up with a damage readout. Shield integrity down to 34% on lead destroyer. Secondary systems offline, their rerouting power to aft thrusters. Voss didn't allow herself a moment of satisfaction. Ortiz, reload. Selby, keep tracking the second destroyer. Park, maintain coolant flow. If we lose the lasers, we lose our only long-range deterrent. The second destroyer, sensing the disturbance, swung its broadside toward the Iron Resolve, its lateral lasers charging. A thin line of crimson lanced toward the ship, aiming for the exposed engine nozzles. Voss ordered a hard starboard yaw. The ship's thrusters fired in asymmetrical bursts, throwing the Iron Resolve into a tight spin that presented its thinner profile to the incoming beam. The laser grazed the edge of the port wing, scorching paint and ablative coating but failing to penetrate the underlying alloy. Laser hit on port wing, superficial, reported Park. Temperature rise within tolerances. Coolant loop stable. The Iron Resolve completed its turn, now positioned behind the destroyer's shield bubble, where the enemy's forward sensors were blinded by their own emissions. Voss seized the opportunity. Fire all forward railguns full salvo. 6 slugs launched in rapid succession, each finding a different point of vulnerability. The shield generator housing the missile launchers, the rear engine array. The destroyer's hull buckled under the cumulative impact, sections of its superstructure tearing away in slow-motion fragments that glittered against the starfield like deadly confetti. The alien vessel lurched, its propulsion faltering. A cascade of secondary explosions rippled through its midsection as compromised fuel lines ignited. The destroyer began to drift, its forward momentum lost, spinning lazily as it lost attitude control. On the Iron Resolve, the crew exhaled in unison, a quiet, controlled release of breath that spoke more of discipline than relief. Selby's voice cut through the hum of the repaired systems. Second destroyer adjusting course. They're attempting to flank us using the debris field as cover. Estimated intercept in 6 minutes. Voss stared at the tactical display, the red vectors of the enemy converging like a predator's gaze. She knew the next move would determine whether they bought mere minutes or a chance to rally the colony fleet. Engineering, prepare to engage the afterburners on a short burst. We'll use the wreckage of the cruiser as a slingshot, throw ourselves into the enemy's blind spot behind the asteroid belt. Weapons, load a salvo of EMP rounds. If we can knock out their targeting arrays, we'll level the field. Patel's hands flew over the controls. Afterburners ready in 30 seconds. EMP rounds loaded in 2 minutes. Ortiz checked the magazine. EMPs at 80% capacity. Ready on your mark. Voss turned to the crew, her gaze sweeping each face, focused, unflinching, each mind already calculating the next vector, the next shot, the next sacrifice. She felt the weight of the colony's hopes, the silent countdown of lives hanging on the durability of steel and the resolve of those who wielded it. Hold position, she commanded. When I say fire, we unleash everything we've got, no hesitation, no second thoughts. The Iron Resolve hung amid the wreckage, a scarred sentinel waiting for the next wave. Beyond the shattered hull of the Dominion cruiser, the darkness of space pulsed with the promise of more steel, more fire, and the unyielding resolve of humanity to stand, unbroken, against the alien armada. The asteroid belt loomed ahead, a jagged necklace of rock and ice that fractured the starfield into a kaleidoscope of shadows. Sensors on the Iron Resolve pinged the approaching Dominion swarm, hundreds of sleek obsidian hulls gliding in tight formation, their thrusters leaving faint ion trails that glittered like trapped fireflies. The enemy's lead cruiser, a behemoth 3 times the length of the Resolve, rotated its dorsal array toward the debris field, seeking the faint electromagnetic hum of human reactors. All stations, report, Voss said, voice low but edged with authority. Her eyes flicked between the tactical overlay and the faces of her crew, each a study in concentration. Navigation locked on slingshot vector, Patel replied, fingers dancing over the helm console. Burn duration set for 12 seconds. We'll hit 0.32C at periaps. Engineering afterburners spooled, Ortiz asked, his tone neutral despite the sweat beading on his forehead. Chambers at 95%, ready to dump on your mark, came the reply from below deck, the hum of the fusion core rising a notch as coolant pumps cycled faster. Weapons, EMP status, Voss turned to the gunnery station. Rounds at 80% capacity, safety's off. Fire control locked on the lead cruiser's targeting array, Lieutenant Cade answered, his visor reflecting the red blinking of the armed munitions. A soft chime sounded as the ship's internal clock ticked down to the final 30 seconds before the burn. Voss felt the weight of every colonist's hope press against her ribs, but she refused to let it translate into hesitation. She inhaled, let the air fill her lungs, and exhaled through clenched teeth. Mark, she said. Patel slammed the helm forward. The Iron Resolve shuddered as the afterburners ignited, a blue-white plume erupting from the stern and pushing the vessel into a steep dive toward the asteroid field. The ship's hull groaned under the sudden acceleration, inertial dampers straining to keep the crew from being crushed against their bulkheads. Outside, the debris field rushed past in a blur, shards of twisted metal, frozen volatiles, and the occasional glittering shard of alien alloy that had survived earlier engagements. "Hold steady," Voss barked, her gaze never leaving the targeting reticle that clung to the enemy cruiser's bridge. "Cade, when we're clear of the belt, fire on my command." The Resolve slipped between two massive asteroids, their gravitic wells tugging at the ship's trajectory. Alarms flickered on the nav display as the computer warned of imminent collision risk, but Patel's hands made micro-adjustments, nudging the vessel just enough to graze the edge of a rock without losing momentum. The ship's side scraped against a jagged outcrop, sending a spray of silicate dust across the viewports, a brief, abrasive whisper that faded as quickly as it came. "Clear of belt," Patel reported, voice tight. "Vector aligned for slingshot." Voss felt the familiar tug of the asteroid's gravity well as the ship swung around the massive body, the outer hull singing against the vacuum as it exchanged momentum. The speedometer climbed 0.28 C, 0.3 C, 0.31 C, then peaked at 0.32 C as the Resolve flung itself outward, trailing a comet's tail of ionized particles. "Now," she shouted. Cade's thumb depressed the firing stud. A salvo of 4 EMP rounds launched from the forward railguns, each projectile encased in an ablative sheath designed to survive the brief transit through the asteroid's debris cloud. The rounds screamed away, leaving behind thin vapor trails that caught the starlight and turned it into a brief, lethal strobe. Impact blossomed in silent fury against the enemy cruiser's flank. The EMP warheads detonated just shy of the hull, releasing a cascading pulse of broadband electromagnetic energy that washed over the Dominion ship like a dark wave. Sensors flared, then died. The cruiser's targeting array stuttered, its luminous glyphs flickering before going dark. Nearby frigates, caught in the edge of the burst, jerked as their own systems hiccuped, thrusters faltering, shields flickering, communications garbled. On the Resolve's bridge, the tactical display flashed red, then shifted to amber as the enemy formation began to disintegrate. The lead cruiser lurched, its bow nose dipping as it lost attitude control, spinning slowly before its engines sputtered and died. A handful of smaller scout vessels, unable to compensate for the sudden loss of navigation aids, veered off course and collided with larger kin, creating a chaotic tangle of metal and plasma. "Damage report," Voss ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline thrumming in her veins. "Minor hull abrasion on port side, no breach," Ortiz replied. "Afterburners at 40%, fuel reserves adequate for another thrust if needed. EMP magazine now at 35%. Shields," Patel asked, "hold at 72% after the backscatter," Cade answered. "Enemy fire rate dropped by 60%. They're scrambling to reboot." Voss allowed herself a fraction of a second to let the numbers sink in. The iron Resolve had bought them more than minutes. They had fractured the Armada's spearhead, sowing confusion that would ripple through the enemy ranks. Yet the battle was far from won. Beyond the stunned cruiser, the rest of the Dominion formation regrouped, their ships closing ranks, weapons charging anew. "Helm, bring us to a defensive flank behind the largest asteroid," Voss instructed. "We'll use its mass as a shield while we reload. Weapons, prep a second salvo, this time kinetic penetrators. Engineering, keep the afterburners ready for a burst thrust if they try to close." Patel eased the helm, turning the ship broadside to the tumbling asteroid. The massive rock loomed, its surface pockmarked with craters that would absorb and scatter incoming fire. The Resolve drifted into its shadow, the asteroid's bulk blotting out the glare of the enemy's weapons arrays. "EMP reload in 90 seconds, Ortiz said. "Kinetic rounds ready in 50. Voss glanced at the chronometer, 4 minutes left before the next wave would be within effective range. She stared at the faces of her crew, each set jaw a testament to the resolve that had kept humanity alive through countless sieges. The enormity of the stakes pressed against her chest, but she let it sharpen her focus rather than cloud it. "Listen up," she said, voice low but carrying across the bridge. "We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we don't stop until they can't get back up. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Make every shot count." The bridge fell into a taut silence, broken only by the soft whine of the ship's systems and the distant, muted thrum of alien engines readying for another assault. Outside, the asteroid belt glittered like a shattered mirror, reflecting both the looming threat and the fragile, unyielding gleam of human steel, ready to strike again. Chapter 6, Episode 15, Shadows of Steel. Humanity's last stand against the alien Armada ASF, the asteroid's shadow swallowed the Resolve whole, its jagged ridges masking the ship's heat signature. The crew's silence was punctuated only by the ticking countdowns on their consoles. Every second was a blade edge, slicing closer to the moment of impact. 30 seconds to kinetic readiness, Ortiz reported, his voice clipped, precise. No wasted syllables. Patel's hands hovered over the helm controls, knuckles pale. Asteroid rotation shifting. We'll have a 3-degree window before the next spin exposes us. Voss leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the tactical display. The alien formation was tightening, their ship sliding into a crescent arc, arrogant, predictable. They thought the humans were cornered, pinned against rock and vacuum. They had no idea what was coming. Ortiz, Voss said, her tone like steel drawn from a sheath. Load penetrators for staggered fire. I want overlapping impacts across their lead cruiser's hull. Patel, hold us steady until the asteroid gives us that window. Then burn hard, short burst, no drift. Aye, Captain, Patel replied, jaw locked. The alien armada loomed on the display, their vessels bristling with energy lances. Each ship was a cathedral of war, gilded with arrogance, their hulls etched with symbols of conquest. They had crushed dozens of civilizations with those same weapons, but humanity was not another conquest. Humanity was the wall they hadn't expected. EMP reload complete, Ortiz said. We can fire on your mark. Voss's gaze swept the bridge. Every face was taut, every breath measured. They were soldiers, engineers, navigators, but above all, survivors. She let the silence stretch, the tension coil tighter until it was a wire ready to snap. Fire. The resolve shuddered as the kinetic penetrators launched, streaking into the void. They were not elegant beams of light, not shimmering plasma arcs. They were brutal, dense rods of tungsten accelerated to a fraction of light speed, pure physics, pure death. The first salvo slammed into the alien cruiser's forward shields. The impact rippled across its surface, bending energy fields like glass under a hammer. The second salvo followed half a heartbeat later, striking the same coordinates. Shields collapsed. The third salvo punched through the exposed hull, tearing into the ship's core. A blossom of fire erupted, silent in the void but devastating in its clarity. Direct hit, Ortiz confirmed, his voice steady but eyes wide. Cruiser is venting atmosphere, their formation is breaking. On the tactical display, alien ships faltered, their crescent arc fracturing. The arrogance of their maneuver dissolved into chaos. Voss allowed herself the faintest curl of satisfaction. Patel, burn now. The resolve surged from the asteroid's shadow, engines flaring. The sudden thrust carried them into open space, the asteroid spinning away behind them. Alien weapons fired, beams lancing toward their position, but the asteroid absorbed the first barrage, its surface erupting in molten sprays. EMP ready, Ortiz said, targeting their flank destroyer. Do it, Voss ordered. The EMP burst rippled outward, invisible but merciless. The alien destroyer systems flickered, its weapons sputtering into silence. Its engines died, leaving it adrift, a carcass in the void. 2 ships disabled, 1 destroyed, Patel said, disbelief edging his tone. We're cutting through them, Voss's voice was calm, almost cold. We're not cutting through, we're carving a path. Keep your focus. The alien fleet regrouped, their remaining ships shifting into a defensive wedge. They were learning, adapting, but too slowly. Humanity's weaponry was crude compared to their advanced systems, but it was relentless, unforgiving. Every strike was calculated, every maneuver designed to exploit arrogance. Captain, Ortiz said, urgency sharpening his words. They're charging their main batteries. If they fire in unison, we won't have cover. Voss studied the display. The wedge formation was aligning, their weapons arrays glowing with lethal energy. It was the kind of strike that had annihilated entire colonies. She felt the weight of it pressing against her chest, but she did not flinch. Patel, vector us toward their rear line, engineering prep afterburners for sustained thrust. Ortiz, load remaining penetrators. We're going straight through. The crew exchanged glances, shock, fear, resolve. Straight through meant threading the needle between ships bristling with weapons. It meant survival balanced on a razor's edge, but no one questioned, no one hesitated. Course locked, Patel said, afterburners primed. Penetrators ready, Ortiz confirmed. Voss's voice was low, steady. This is where we break them, hold nothing back. The resolve lunged forward, engines roaring against the void. Alien ships fired, beams slicing past, scorching the hull with near misses. The bridge trembled, alarms flaring, but the ship held course. Penetrators launched, slamming into the rear line. One alien frigate split apart, its hull peeling like paper under flame. Another reeled, shields collapsing under the relentless barrage. Afterburners now, Voss commanded. The resolve surged, velocity spiking. They tore through the gap, alien ships scrambling to adjust. The wedge collapsed, their formation unraveling under the sudden breach. Human steel had pierced alien arrogance, and the battlefield shifted. Status, Voss demanded. Ortiz scanned his console. 2 frigates destroyed, 1 cruiser disabled. Their wedges gone, they're scattering. Patel exhaled, tension bleeding from his shoulders. We're clear of their kill zone. Voss allowed herself a single nod. Good, but this isn't over. They'll regroup. They always do. The bridge fell into silence again, the crew absorbing the moment. Victory was never permanent. Survival was never guaranteed. But for now, humanity had struck back and the alien armada had felt fear. Voss's gaze lingered on the tactical display, watching the enemy ships drift, scatter, burn. She spoke softly, but every word carried weight. They think we're fragile. They think we're desperate. Let them keep thinking it. Because when we strike again, it won't just be survival. It will be annihilation. The resolve pressed deeper into the asteroid belt, shadows closing around them once more. The war was far from finished, but humanity had carved its mark into the void, and the alien empires would never forget the sting of steel. Chapter 7, Episode 15, Shadows of Steel. Humanity's last stand against the alien Armada, ASF. The asteroid belt was no sanctuary. It was a labyrinth of jagged stone and drifting debris, every shadow a potential ambush. The resolve cut through the void with precision, its thrusters whispering against the silence. On the bridge, the crew's eyes remained locked on the tactical display, where alien icons flickered like predators circling prey. Contacts bearing 085, Ortiz reported, voice clipped. Fast movers, not frigates, interceptors, they're sweeping the belt. Voss leaned forward, her jaw set. They're hunting us, they know we're here. Patel's fingers danced across his console, pulling up trajectories. They're running a net, if they tighten it we'll be boxed in. Voss didn't flinch. Then we break the net before it closes. The crew exchanged glances. Calm, deliberate, unshaken, Voss's tone carried the weight of inevitability. She wasn't asking if they could survive. She was stating that they would. The alien interceptors streaked into view, sleek frames glinting against the fractured light of the belt. Their formation was textbook arrogance, wide arcs, overlapping fields of fire, confident in their superiority. They had crushed dozens of fleets with this maneuver, but they had never faced humans who refused to play by the rules. Lock batteries, Voss ordered. No warning shots, we cut them down. The Resolve's cannons swiveled, targeting solutions snapping into place. Ortiz's voice was steady, clinical. Targets acquired, firing arcs clear. Execute. The ship shuddered as plasma bolts tore into the void. The first interceptor vanished in a blossom of fire, its hull vaporized before its pilot could react. The second twisted, shields flaring, but the Resolve's gunners tracked it mercilessly. A second detonation lit the belt, fragments scattering like shrapnel. 2 down, Ortiz confirmed. They're adjusting, Patel's eyes narrowed. They're tightening formation, less spread, more discipline. Voss allowed herself a thin smile. Good, that makes them predictable. The alien commander's arrogance faltered. On their tactical feed, human steel had carved through their net with surgical precision. The interceptors regrouped, wings folding into a spearhead thrust. They would overwhelm the Resolve with sheer velocity, a storm of plasma fire designed to shred shields and hull alike. Brace, Voss said, her voice calm as stone. They'll come fast. The bridge dimmed as the ship's systems rerouted power. Shields flared, engines roared, and the Resolve became a predator disguised as prey. The interceptors surged forward, plasma streaks cutting across the void. The asteroid belt lit up with fire. Impact in 3, Ortiz warned. 2-1, the Resolve twisted, thrusters flaring. Instead of retreating, it surged forward straight into the spearhead. Plasma bolts grazed its shields, but the sudden acceleration shattered the aliens' timing. Their formation buckled, ships colliding, arcs breaking. Now, Voss barked, the cannons unleashed hell. 3 interceptors disintegrated in seconds, their arrogance punished by human audacity. The survivors scattered, their cohesion gone. Patel exhaled, sweat beading on his brow. That was suicide for anyone else. Voss's gaze remained locked on the tactical display. Not suicide, calculated risk. They expect hesitation. We give them aggression. Ortiz's console pinged. Remaining interceptors retreating, they're pulling back to regroup. Silence fell across the bridge, heavy but charged. The Resolve had not just survived, it had humiliated the hunters. The alien empire's doctrine was unraveling, thread by thread, against human defiance, but victory was never clean. Patel's console flashed red. Captain, long-range scans, multiple cruisers inbound, they're moving to reinforce. Ortiz's voice tightened. At least 4 signatures, heavy tonnage, they'll crush us if they pin us here. Voss stood, her presence commanding. Then we don't let them pin us, plot a course deeper into the belt, we'll use the rocks as cover. Patel hesitated. That's a gauntlet, navigation will be brutal. Voss's reply was ice, better brutal than dead. The Resolve plunged deeper, weaving through the asteroid field. Massive stones drifted like ancient titans, their surfaces scarred by millennia of collisions. The cruisers followed, arrogant in their pursuit, certain that human steel would shatter against alien might. But the belt was not their domain. It was chaos incarnate, and chaos was humanity's ally. Ortiz, Voss said, her voice low, deliberate. Feed me their pursuit vectors. Ortiz complied, data streaming across the display. The cruisers advanced in rigid lines, their arrogance refusing deviation. They believed brute force would suffice. Voss's eyes narrowed. Patel, adjust course, thread us through the densest cluster. Make them bleed for every meter. Patel's hands moved with surgical precision. Course locked, it'll be tight. Good, tight is survival. The Resolve darted through the belt, asteroids scraping past its hull, shields flaring against debris. Behind them, the cruisers struggled, their bulk unsuited for the chaos. One clipped a stone, shields collapsing in a burst of energy. Another slowed, formation breaking. Ortiz's voice carried a note of satisfaction. They're faltering, their arrogance is killing them. Voss's reply was steel, not arrogance, doctrine. They believe order is strength, we prove chaos is sharper. The cruisers pressed on, but the Resolve had already carved its path. Every maneuver was a blade, every asteroid a shield. Humanity's defiance was not desperation, it was strategy born of survival, and in the void, survival was victory. Voss's gaze lingered on the display, watching alien icons stumble, scatter, burn. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of inevitability. They think we're fragile, they think we're prey. Let them keep thinking it, because when the hammer falls, it won't be defense, it will be annihilation. The Resolve vanished deeper into the belt, shadows swallowing its frame. Behind them, the alien cruisers clawed at the void, their arrogance bleeding into fear. Humanity had struck again, and the war was shifting. The void was steel, and steel remembered. Chapter 8, Shadows of Steel. Humanity's last stand against the alien Armada ASF. The asteroid belt thinned, opening into a stretch of fractured void. The Resolve's hull bore the scars of the gauntlet, scorched plating, flickering shield nodes, but it was alive, and alive meant lethal. Voss stood rigid at the command dais, eyes locked on the tactical display. Alien cruisers regrouped beyond the belt, their formation ragged but reforming with mechanical precision. Doctrine reasserting itself, order clawing back from chaos. Status, Voss demanded. Patel's voice was clipped, efficient. Shields at 43%, hull integrity stable. Engines running hot but controllable. Ortiz leaned forward, studying the alien regroup. They're tightening formation again, trying to box us in. Voss's jaw tightened. They think geometry wins wars, let's show them math bleeds. The alien fleet advanced, a wall of steel and arrogance. Their cruisers moved in lockstep, weapons arrays glowing with cold menace. To them, humanity was a nuisance, fragile prey delaying the inevitable. But the Resolve was not prey. It was a scalpel, and scalpel cuts deep. Target their lead cruiser, Voss ordered. Patel, vector us across their bow. Ortiz, prep the rail batteries. Ortiz's fingers danced across the console. Batteries hot. Firing solution locked. The Resolve surged forward, engines screaming against the void. Alien fire lanced out, beams slicing through space with surgical precision. Shields flared, buckled, held. The ship twisted, threading through the barrage with impossible grace. Then the rail batteries spat steel. 3 slugs tore across the void, kinetic fury wrapped in silence. The lead cruiser's shields flared, cracked, collapsed. 1 slug punched through its hull, venting atmosphere and bodies into the abyss. The cruiser staggered, formation faltering. Ortiz's grin was feral. Bulls, their doctrine just lost a tooth. The alien response was immediate. Flanking cruisers broke formation, weapons converging on the Resolve. Beams hammered the shields, each impact a thunderclap of energy. Patel's hands moved with surgical calm, twisting the ship through the storm. Shields at 29%, Patel reported. We can't take sustained fire. Voss's voice was steel. We won't. Ortiz, prep the mines, scatter pattern. Ortiz hesitated. That'll burn through reserves. Reserves don't matter if we're dead, scatter them. The Resolve's belly opened, releasing a swarm of mines into the void. Tiny spheres drifted, invisible against the black. The alien cruisers pressed forward, blind to the trap. Then the mines ignited. Explosions ripped through the formation, tearing hulls, shredding shields. 1 cruiser vanished in a blossom of fire, another staggered, venting plasma. The wall of steel fractured, arrogance bleeding into panic. Patel's voice carried a note of awe. They didn't see it coming. Voss's reply was cold. They never do. Doctrine blinds them. Survival sharpens us. The Resolve twisted through the chaos, every maneuver a blade. Alien cruisers scrambled, trying to reassert order, but the void was no longer theirs. It belonged to chaos, and chaos was human. Ortiz's console lit with fresh contacts. More cruisers inbound, reinforcements. They're not giving up. Voss studied the display, eyes narrowing. Good, let them come. The more they commit, the more they blade. Patel glanced back, voice low. We can't hold forever. Voss's gaze was steel. We don't need forever, we need enough. The alien reinforcements surged, a tide of steel and fire. The Resolve darted through them, every move calculated, every strike deliberate. Rail slugs tore hulls, mines shredded formations, torpedoes carved scars across arrogance. The void became a graveyard, alien cruisers burning, scattering, dying. Ortiz's voice was tight, focused. We're thinning them, but they're still pressing. Voss's reply was calm, terrifyingly calm. That's the point. Every ship we break here is one less hammer tomorrow. Humanity doesn't win by surviving. We win by making them blade. The battle raged, steel against steel, doctrine against chaos. The alien fleet pressed, but the Resolve carved, cut, killed. Humanity's defiance was not desperation. It was strategy, sharpened by survival, honed by necessity. And in the void, necessity was victory. Patel's console flared. Critical hit on their command cruiser. It's breaking formation. Ortiz's grin was savage. Command down, the rest will stumble. Voss's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of inevitability. They think we're fragile, they think we're prey. Let them keep thinking it, because when the hammer falls, it won't be defense, it will be annihilation. The resolve vanished deeper into the chaos, shadows swallowing its frame. Behind them, alien cruisers clawed at the void, their arrogance bleeding into fear. Humanity had struck again, and the war was shifting. The void was steel, and steel remembered. Chapter 9, The Silence. Before the break, the alien fleet regrouped, their fractured lines knitting back together with mechanical precision. Even crippled, they moved like predators unwilling to concede the hunt. The Resolve drifted in the shadow of a shattered cruiser, its hull scorched but intact, its crew silent except for the clipped cadence of orders. Every heartbeat was measured against the rhythm of war. Ortiz leaned over his console, eyes narrowing. They're pulling in reinforcements from the far flank, heavy carriers. If they launch, we'll be swimming in interceptors. Patel's fingers danced across tactical overlays. Trajectory suggests they're trying to box us in. They want us pinned against the wreckage field. Voss stood at the center of the command deck, posture unshaken, voice steady. They're overextending. Carriers without escort are meat. We cut them before they deploy. The crew exchanged glances. It wasn't bravado, it was calculation. Humanity had learned that arrogance was the alien empire's greatest weakness. They believed numbers equaled inevitability. Voss believed inevitability was a lie. The Resolve surged forward, thrusters burning cold blue. Mines deployed in staggered arcs, rail slugs fired in disciplined bursts. Alien carriers loomed ahead, massive silhouettes bristling with launch bays. The first salvo struck, detonations rippling across their armored hides. One carrier buckled, its spine snapping under the pressure of cascading explosions. Ortiz's grin was sharp. Area 1 neutralized, Patel's tone was clipped. Second carrier launching, fighters inbound. The void lit with swarms, sleek alien interceptors, wings of steel slicing through darkness. They moved in disciplined formations, arrogant in their numbers. The Resolve's guns pivoted, flak bursts tearing into the swarm. Drones launched from hidden bays, weaving through chaos, detonating in precise patterns. Each explosion carved holes in the alien tide. Voss's voice cut through the storm. Hold formation, don't chase. Make them come to us. The alien swarm pressed, but the Resolve's defense was surgical. Every interceptor destroyed was not just a kill, it was a message. Humanity did not panic, humanity did not scatter. Humanity calculated, and calculation was lethal. Ortiz barked, they're trying to flank starboard. Patel countered, redirecting drone wing, starboard defense reinforced. The alien formation broke against the Resolve's wall of fire. Interceptors spiraled into wreckage, their arrogance bleeding into hesitation. The swarm faltered, cohesion unraveling. Voss watched, eyes cold. They're learning fear, good, fear makes them slow. Then the void shifted. A new signature flared across sensors, larger, heavier, radiating command authority. An alien dreadnought emerged from the dark, its hull bristling with weapons, its presence a declaration. The smaller ships rallied to it, arrogance restored by its shadow. Ortiz muttered, that's their hammer. Patel's voice was tight. Dreadnought class, firepower exceeds ours by a factor of 6. The crew waited for Voss. His silence stretched, then broke with calm certainty. Then we don't fight the dreadnought, we make it fight itself. Confusion flickered, but orders followed. Mines redeployed, drones repositioned, torpedoes armed. The Resolve darted into the wreckage field, weaving through shattered hulls. The dreadnought pursued, arrogance demanding dominance. Smaller ships followed, their formation tightening around their command vessel. Ortiz's eyes widened as realization dawned. Pulling them into the kill box. Voss's reply was quiet, surgical. Exactly. The trap snapped shut. Mines detonated in cascading waves, wreckage collapsing into the alien formation. Torpedoes struck from hidden angles, ripping through escorts. The dreadnought fired, its weapons tearing apart its own allies caught in the chaos. Alien arrogance became alien slaughter. Patel's console flared. Multiple escorts destroyed, dreadnought shields strained. Ortiz's voice was savage. They're bleeding themselves. The Resolve struck again, rail slugs hammering the dreadnought's weakened flank. Explosions rippled across its hull, fire venting into the void. The massive vessel staggered, its arrogance cracking under the weight of human calculation. Voss's voice carried across the deck, calm and final. They thought we were prey, they thought numbers meant victory, but steel remembers and steel cuts. The dreadnought reeled, its escorts shattered, its command fractured. The alien fleet faltered, arrogance dissolving into chaos. The Resolve vanished once more into shadow, leaving wreckage and silence in its wake. Humanity had not survived, humanity had struck. And in the void, the war was shifting again. Chapter 10, the shattered crown, the wreckage field still burned, fragments of alien hulls drifting like embers in the void. The Resolve's crew held their silence, each breath measured, each heartbeat tethered to the rhythm of war. The dreadnought had staggered, but it had not fallen. Its arrogance was wounded, not extinguished. Patel's voice cut through the quiet. Dreadnought shields at 30%, hull breaches across multiple decks. They're trying to stabilize. Ortiz leaned forward, eyes locked on the tactical display. They'll regroup. Arrogance doesn't die easy. They'll throw everything to prove they're still gods. Voss stood at the center of the deck, hands clasped behind his back, gaze fixed on the holographic projection of the battlefield. His tone was surgical, stripped of emotion. Then we don't give them time, we press, we cut deeper. The alien fleet shifted, escorts were forming around the wounded dreadnought. Their formation was ragged, but their weapons still glowed with lethal promise. The dreadnought's command signals pulsed outward, desperate to reassert control. The arrogance of Empire demanded obedience, even as its crown cracked. Multiple frigates moving to intercept, Patel reported. They're trying to box us in, Ortiz's jaw tightened. They're learning, slowly. But they're learning, Voss's reply was cold steel. Then we teach them the final lesson. The Resolve surged forward, engines flaring against the void. Rail batteries spat tungsten slugs, tearing through the intercepting frigates. Each shot was precise, each kill deliberate, human calculation against alien pride. The frigates died screaming into silence, their wreckage scattering like broken teeth. The dreadnought answered. Its main batteries roared, beams slicing through the void, carving scars across the wreckage field. One blast grazed the Resolve's flank, shields flaring, hull plating shuddering under the impact. The deck trembled, alarms flared, but the crew held steady. Patel's knuckles whitened on her console. Shields at 60%, we can't take repeated hits like that. Ortiz's voice was sharp, savage. We don't let them fire again. Voss's gaze never wavered. Target their weapon arrays, break their teeth. The Resolve pivoted, thrusters burning hard. Torpedoes streaked from hidden launchers, weaving through debris, slamming into the dreadnought's weapon mounts. Explosions rippled across its hull, fire venting into the void. The dreadnought's beams faltered, its roar choked into silence. Patel's console flared. Weapon systems compromised, their firepower is collapsing. Ortiz allowed himself a grim smile. Now they blade, but the dreadnought was not finished. Its arrogance was wounded, but its fury was alive. It unleashed swarms of drones, thousands of metallic predators spilling into the void. They moved with mechanical precision, a tide of steel meant to overwhelm, to drown humanity in numbers. Patel's voice was tight. Drones swarm inbound, vectoring across all quadrants. Ortiz spat the words like a curse. They want to bury us. Voss's tone was calm, surgical. Then we turn their burial into their grave. The Resolve's guns roared, flak cannons shredding drones into fragments. Rail slugs tore through swarms, each shot a scalpel cutting into the tide. But the drones kept coming, endless, relentless. The void filled with their metallic shrieks, a storm of steel pressing against human resolve. Patel's console screamed warnings, shields dropping, 40%, hull integrity strained. Ortiz's voice was savage, defiant. We hold, we cut, we kill. Voss's command was quiet, final. Deploy the net. Hidden charges detonated across the wreckage field. Electromagnetic pulses rippled outward, arcs of lightning dancing across the void. The drones convulsed, systems frying, circuits burning. Thousands went dark, drifting lifeless into silence. The swarm collapsed, arrogance undone by human calculation. Patel's voice was sharp, triumphant. Drone swarm neutralized, the field is clear. Ortiz's grin was feral. Now it's just us and the crown. The dreadnought loomed, wounded, burning, its arrogance stripped bare. Its escorts were shattered, its drones destroyed, its weapons crippled. But it still stood, massive, defiant, the symbol of empire refusing to fall. Voss's voice carried across the deck, calm and final. They thought numbers meant victory. They thought arrogance meant immortality. But steel remembers, and steel cuts. The Resolve surged forward, rail batteries hammering, torpedoes streaking, fire tearing into the dreadnought's hull. Explosions rippled across its surface, decks collapsing, flames venting into the void. The massive vessel staggered, its crown shattering under the weight of human steel. Patel's console flared, critical breaches across their core, they're collapsing. Ortiz's voice was savage, triumphant. The crown is breaking. The dreadnought reeled, its arrogance dissolving into silence. Its command signals faltered, its empire fractured. The void filled with wreckage, with fire, with the death of arrogance. The Resolve vanished once more into shadow, leaving silence in its wake. Humanity had not survived. Humanity had struck, and in the void, the crown of empire lay shattered. The void outside the Resolve's viewport still reeks of ionized plasma, even through the reinforced lamination. Twisted chunks of iridescent hegemony dreadnought hull spin in lazy arcs, some still venting thin blue-white atmosphere into the vacuum, their jagged edges glowing cherry red where rail rounds punch through layered armor. Wreckage drifts for kilometers, interspersed with the cold, dark husks of escort corvettes and the sparking remains of the drone swarm, their circuits finally silent after the feed cut. The only sound on the bridge is the low thrum of the Resolve's cooling reactors, and the soft click of consoles booting back online after the fight's power surges. Weapons Chief Ortiz leans back in his station, peels the sweat-soaked glove off his right hand and slaps it against his console, the feral grin from the fight's final minutes fading into a sharp, satisfied smirk. Dreadnought's fully broken, no core signature left, no comms pinging. That arrogant bastard's scrapped now. Systems lead Patel doesn't look up from her screen, her fingers flying across the haptic interface as she runs full diagnostic sweeps of the Resolve's hull and weapons arrays. Hull breaches patched on decks 7 through 12, rail batteries at 87% capacity, torpedo magazines at 62%. We took 18% less damage than my pre-fight projection. They underestimated our point defense coverage by 40%. Captain Voss stands at the viewport, his back to the bridge, his voice low and steady, no trace of the triumph from the fight's final moments. Don't get comfortable. The hegemony doesn't send their capital ships alone without a follow-up plan. Patel's console blares a sharp, narrowband alert, the kind reserved for unplanned incoming transmissions. She swivels her seat, her expression tightening as she pulls up the corrupted burst, running it through 3 layers of decode algorithms in 10 seconds flat. Got it. It was a last-second burst from the Dreadnought's command suite, right before their core went critical. Half the data's fried, but the coordinates packet is intact. She toggles the translation matrix, and a guttural, sneering alien voice fills the bridge, no warmth, no hesitation. You have eliminated a Vanguard unit. The hegemony main fleet will drop out of warp at the attached coordinates in 72 standard hours. We will reduce your home system to dust, every colony, every vessel, every human life erased for your insolence. Ortiz slams his fist on his console so hard the tactical display flickers. 72 hours. They think we're just gonna sit here and wait for them to show up. Patel's already pulling up the star chart, her face tight. Those coordinates mark a previously uncharted micro-jump point 1.2 AU outside Mars orbit. Our outer defense buoys don't cover it. They can drop their entire fleet right in our backyard before our long-range sensors even pick up their warp signature. She taps a key, pulling up the fleet strength projection, the burst included, her voice dropping. Main fleet is 17 capital ships, 42 escort cruisers, 120 support vessels. They outgun our entire system defense fleet 3-1. The Sol Defense Command bunker under the Rocky Mountains hums with the same low thrum as the Resolve's bridge, rows of officers hunched over consoles as the transmission is forwarded across every fleet channel in the system. General Halloway stands at the main holographic display, the projected coordinates of the jump point glowing red above the table, his jaw tight. Tell the convoy escorts to reroute all civilian colony ships to the inner system defense perimeter. Pull the 3rd and 7th battle groups from the outer rim to hold the jump point approach. Get every available fighter wing on standby. Load all anti-capital ship torpedoes. He glances at the comms officer, his voice sharp. Send a priority ping to the Resolve. Tell Captain Voss we need a recon team through that jump point in 12 hours. I want to know what's on the other side before the hegemony gets there. Voss nods as the transmission comes through, already turning to his helmsman before the ping finishes playing. Helms, plot a course for the jump point. Recon team will be a pair of stealth fighters led by LT, Rurk. We drop out of warp in 10 hours, do a 6-hour sweep, get back before the hegemony's ETA. He turns back to the viewport, his gaze fixed on the distant glint of Mars hanging in the black, then to the spinning wreckage of the Dreadnought drifting behind them. Ortiz lets out a rough huff, already reloading his weapon station's targeting array. Thought taking down that crown ship was the win. Turns out it was just the opening move. Voss's mouth tugs up, just a hint of a smile, sharp and cold. They sent a Vanguard to test our defenses, to get cocky, to leave that jump point unmonitored. They just handed us the one thing we needed, time to set the trap. He taps the comms panel, his voice carrying across every deck of the Resolve, loud and clear, no room for doubt. All hands stay on alert. The real fight starts in 72 hours. Make sure they regret ever finding our system. The all-hands broadcast cuts out, and the Resolve's bridge erupts into controlled chaos. Petty Officer Lyra slams a fresh power coupling into the port torpedo bay loader, yelling over her shoulder at a recruit who's fumbling a crate of high-yield warheads. Move it, kid, you drop those and we're all floating scrap before the hegemony even clears the jump point. Down in the hangar, Rurk runs a diagnostic on his stealth fighter's sensor array, his co-pilot already strapping a pair of extra anti-capital torpedoes to the wing mounts. The deck plates still hum from the earlier Vanguard skirmish, scorch marks crisscrossing the bulkheads where stray plasma fire had bitten into the hull. 10 hours later, the pair of stealth craft drop out of warp at the jump point's edge, their passive sensors screaming before their drives even cool. Rurk's comms crackle with the Resolve's silent ping signal, and he keys his mic, voice low. Voss, we've got contacts. 4 capital ships, 12 support cruisers, fighter wing launching now. ETA to Sol system, 48 hours, not 72. Before Voss can respond, a hegemony interceptor's sensor sweep pings the stealth fighter's signature. Rurk yanks the stick hard to starboard, jettisoning a sensor buoy loaded with the fleet's contact data seconds before a plasma bolt sears through the space where his port wing had been. His wingman takes a hit to the engine, spiraling toward a desolate outer moon, his comms cutting out mid-shout. Rurk burns hard for the resolve, the hegemony fighter's hot on his tail, only making it back to the carrier's hangar bay with seconds of fuel to spare. The data chip he pulls from his fighter's recorder hits Voss's desk 10 minutes later, and the captain doesn't hesitate. 3rd and 7th battle groups hold position in the asteroid belt outside Mars. Ortiz, take your destroyer squadron to the jump point, feign a full retreat, draw their capital ships past the belt. All fighter wings launch on my mark. Ortiz grins, blood already trickling from a cut on his forehead from the earlier fight, and keys his own comms. All destroyers, you heard the man, let's give those arrogant bastards exactly what they came for. The hegemony fleet clears the jump point 36 hours later, their flagship, the Worldrender, a 2-kilometer-long black dreadnought that blots out the stars behind it. A harsh, accented voice crackles over the comms, sneering. Human vessels, surrender your system or we will glass your primary colony. Resistance is futile. Voss leans forward, mouth twisting into that same cold, sharp smile he'd worn 72 hours prior, and cuts the transmission. Fire, the hidden railgun batteries embedded in the asteroid belt open up first, plasma bolts slamming into the lead hegemony battlecruiser before its shields can fully charge. 2 more capitals go dark in the first 10 seconds, their hulls ripped apart by concentrated fire. Ortiz's destroyer squadron feigns panic, burning hard for Mars, and the Worldrender takes the bait, its engines roaring as it gives chase. The moment it clears the asteroid belt's edge, the 3rd battle group's torpedo bays open up, 120 capital torpedoes streaking toward the hegemony flagship. The Worldrender's point defense swats half of them away, but the rest slam into its port side, blowing a massive hole in the hull. Its main cannon, aimed directly at Mars' defense grid, explodes before it can fire, picked off by the Resolve's point defense batteries. The hegemony carrier launches its 300-strong fighter wing, but the human reserve fighters swarm out from behind Mars' moons, dogfighting them across the system. Rurk is in the thick of it, his fighter's cannons blazing as he takes out 3 interceptors trying to pick off a damaged Allied bomber. By the time the last hegemony fighter goes down, the Worldrender is dead in the water, its bridge a smoldering crater. The remaining hegemony cruisers try to retreat to the jump point, only to find the 7th battle group waiting, their torpedo tubes locked and loaded. Within an hour, the entire hegemony invasion force has surrendered, their comms blaring static and demands for quarter. The Resolve drifts at the edge of the debris field an hour later, its hull scorched but intact, the wreckage of the hegemony fleet spinning slowly in the black behind it. Voss stands on the bridge, watching a team of Marines board the Worldrender's crippled hull to secure its data cores, when Ortiz claps him on the shoulder, holding up a cracked data chip pulled from the dreadnought's bridge. Their command logs. They've got 3 more fleets en route to Sol, but this one was supposed to hit in 3 days. Now we've got 6 months to get ready. Voss takes the chip, his gaze fixed on the distant glint of Mars, then the empty space where the hegemony jump point still shimmers. Tell the 3rd and 7th to hold position. Get every foundry in the system running 24/7. Next time they show up, we won't just be waiting, we'll be ready to push them all the way back to their homeworld. The comms officer pings him a second later, voice tight. Captain, the Outer Rim recon team just checked in. No hegemony contacts for 12 light years. We bought ourselves time. Voss nods, turning back to the viewport, the first glints of dawn breaking over Mars' horizon, painting the wreckage of the enemy fleet gold. Good, let's get to work.